Well, there is a great risk that this economic rivalry between the United States and China could escalate into war. And if a war would happen, then Taiwan seems like the most likely trigger. I therefore first want to ask, do you see a path for Taiwan to become another Ukraine? That is a proxy war that risks growing into a wider, direct war?
Absolutely. There are a lot of parallels with Ukraine. Ukraine became, in the American mind, contested territory in a contest with Russia. Who would control Ukraine? It's a strange question. The answer in the case of Ukraine should have been that Ukraine would be left neutral as its original constitution and as its government 15 years ago wanted. But for the U.S., neutrality was not good enough. So the U.S. participated in a coup in 2014 that brought in a pro-NATO government. And there's been a contest that turned into, of course, a devastating war over the future of Ukraine. I believe the U.S. has delusions of power. I'm talking about the U.S. political class. They don't understand we're in a multipolar world. They want to be in a U.S.-only led world. China is an affront to that. So starting roughly a decade ago, the U.S. turned to quite hostile policies vis-a-vis China. And you mentioned the trade war as one of those instruments, but it goes well beyond the trade war. It goes to military buildup in East Asia, in the Philippines, in Korea, in Japan, in other U.S. military bases. It goes to diplomacy, creating anti-China instruments like the Quad or AUKUS. It goes to technology export bans and overt attempts to contain China's growth. And this has been going on for a decade. So finally, put Taiwan back into this story. From inside Taiwan, there is a long-term trend towards wanting independence, a democratic system, a new generation of young people without the emotional or experiential ties to the mainland, unlike their parents and grandparents. And so there's a growing movement towards independence. On the mainland side, there's a growing movement with political and military and financial power to saying, no way, we are now reunified. Believe it, because China is so strong. And on the United States side, there is, on the one part, angst about China's strength. There is a pretty broad-based attempt to weaken China in any way, and for mischievous, I think dangerous American politicians, they see Taiwan as something to play with in a way against China, in the same way that many in the U.S. saw Ukraine as something to provoke Russia. The U.S. support for Ukraine's NATO membership was mostly about the U.S. and to weaken Russia, not about Ukraine itself, which ended up losing badly in this proxy war between the U.S. and Russia. So Taiwan is now part of a contest between China and the United States. And China says, don't you dare intervene in our internal policy. There is one China. We have said it from the beginning. Footnote, so has the Republic of China in Taipei said it from 1949. There is one China. Don't you, the United States, come into the middle of this. The U.S., by contrast, says, we're there from the beginning. And we have the right and the duty and the determination to protect Taiwan against any kind of military incursion or forced reunification from the mainland. Don't you dare think about using force. And while we have technically a strategic ambiguity as to whether we would militarily support Taiwan, in fact, President Biden said on repeated occasions, yes, we would defend Taiwan. And so this is indeed a very hot situation and a very dangerous situation. Three actors, China, capital in Beijing of the People's Republic of China, that says there is one China and nobody should think differently, and reunification is a historic must. It's going to happen, and if it has to happen by force, that's not ruled out. Taiwan politically is divided into many different groups. Those who say prudently maintain the status quo, those who say we should aim for reunification, those who say we should aim for independence. So the politics in Taiwan is very lively indeed. And the United States is saying we reserve the right to defend Taiwan. We reserve the right to arm Taiwan over PRC objections. We reserve the right to visit Taiwan, to have meetings with politicians. It's very fraught. The U.S. Has been a foe of communist China because the U.S. has this deep anti-communism in its mentality, even when the term is in the Chinese characteristics, so-called. This is a super sophisticated mixed economy, private capital galore, mixed economy, a public sector as well. But in the U.S. mentality, communism has been the evil for a century since the Bolshevik Revolution, and in the case of China, already with the founding of the People's Republic of China, the U.S. backed Taiwan in this war against communism. And then in 1951, John Foster Dulles, who would go on to become the fervent anti-communist foreign minister, Secretary of State of the United States under Dwight Eisenhower, identified the so-called First Island Chain, which is a chain, an archipelago, that the United States would defend, including Taiwan, Japan, the Philippines, Guam. And this idea was if the U.S. controls this chain, it limits China's access, including submarine access and naval access more generally, to the wider Pacific Ocean. It hems China in. It threatens China's sea routes. It makes possible chokeholds over China's food supplies coming from abroad and its energy resources coming from abroad. That First Island Chain became part of U.S. military doctrine. China understands that. This is, again, part of this, right now, almost a Cold War, or maybe a Cold War between the U.S. and China. And so this is another reason why there's this depth, not only maybe I left an impression of symbolism of American power or desire to weaken China, but military doctrine and strategic doctrine, and on the Chinese side, a deep awareness of history and a determination not again to be subjected to the Western powers which did such devastation, or Japan, which, as it itself said at the end of the 19th century, joined the Western Imperial Club.
I think this history and ideology is very important because when you end up in a strategic situation where winner takes all and neither side is willing to give an inch, you usually wandering into very dangerous territory. And when it involves the two greatest power in the international system, we do have a problem. But Professor Sachs, thank you so much, as always, for your time. I know you're a very busy man, so I'll want to add more of your time.
Just to say, we need, above all, prudence and peace here. because if it were not for the U.S. meddling, I'm quite sure that across the straits there would be a solution to these issues that is peaceful, sensible, and especially pragmatic. And if the world, and God help us, politicians in the United States, are pragmatic and prudent, then peace will prevail. If they are delusional, as they were in Ukraine, hot-headed, arrogant, reckless, provocative, then Taiwan could become a flashpoint, and a very dangerous one.